Hello, Dominic here. I am the Festival Director of the Bournemouth Writing Festival and looking forward to welcoming you to Bournemouth Town Centre on the 26th, 27th and 28th of April 2024 for the second Bournemouth Writing Festival. Now, I just wanted to mention a couple of things about our venues. So we're going to have two main venues. The festival hub is going to be the Pavilion Dance, and then we've got a kind of secondary satellite venue at the Avenue Shopping Centre, which is on the pedestrian shopping area of Bournemouth. Plus, we've got kind of bits and pieces elsewhere around Bournemouth. Those are going to be our two main indoor venues, I would say. Now, I've had some emails from you about the Pavilion Dance. So the Pavilion Dance is an arts charity, and it's around the back of the main Pavilion Theatre, and it's right on Lower Gardens. And there are three venues within the Pavilion Dance. We have a theatre and two studios. So I know some of you are a little bit confused because of the timings, and you're thinking, one's going to start before the other one finishes. So don't worry, we do have three different venues within that one. Also within the Pavilion Dance, we have our information desk where you can come and ask questions about what's going on, see the latest updates. There's a little cafe there as well, and we also have our speakers bookshop there. Plus, we've got a couple of companies with stands, and there's kind of little chill out areas. So the Pavilion Dance is the place to come as our kind of central hub, our gravitational spot. So within the Pavilion Dance, we've got lots of talks, workshops and panels happening over those 3 days. And one of those is Screenwriting Tricks for Novelists by Lizzie Fry, who I'm glad to say is with me today. Now, her talk is on Friday. We have 5 talks on Friday, and hers starts at 2 o'clock. Now, Lucy writes under 2 names you may have heard of, Lizzie Fry and also Lizzie Fry, and you'll see a book over her shoulder in a second when she starts talking. She is an author, scriptwriter and blogger. As well as fiction, Lucy also writes non-fiction to help writers to write, including how not to write female characters and writing and selling drama screenplays, to name but 2. Along with this, she also has a platform of over 35,000 hugely engaged followers called Bang to Write, which includes resources, tips and free stuff for screenwriters and novelists. So welcome, Lucy.
Hi, thank you so much for having me. I can't wait to talk at the festival.
Thank you so much for coming to the festival and talking to me today. So, Lucy, tell us a little bit about how you began writing and the different paths you've chosen. And I'm very interested to know why you've chosen 2 different names to write under.
Wow, okay. So I've always wanted to write. And even as a child, I was making up stories, and I always knew that I wanted to be involved somehow in the creative arts. I wasn't really sure how that would happen. But I knew just deep in my gut, as it were, even as a small child, that I wanted to be involved. Then I was a teenage mother, and I wasn't sure if I could do the things that I had always wanted to do. But then I was like, well, how can I say to my kids, you got to follow your dreams if you don't, so that was like the catalyst moment for me. And I actually went to Bournemouth University. I did this script writing for film and TV course there, and I didn't even know that script writing was a job, to be quite honest, until I saw it in the UCAS handbook. That's how long ago this was, because I'm so old now. And so I went and learned about script writing. I really enjoyed it. And I fell into script reading, and I started creating content for screenwriters and for my clients and things like that online, and it turned into a blog, and it kind of just really got away from me, really, in terms of popularity, which is fantastic. But a lot of it I just kind of fell into, really. I didn't really know what I was doing. I just knew that I wanted to be involved in the creative arts, and then these opportunities happened. So like come and do a course, or, you know, start writing a blog, social media is invented, you know, all of that kind of stuff. And I just thought, I'm just going to say yes to all of these things and see where it takes me. And, you know, 20 years on now, I've been a script editor for screenplays, particularly movies and short films. But also I've worked with a variety of writers, including novelists and TV writers as well. And yeah, it was just a question really of just kind of knowing what you want and then saying yes to the opportunities, because I think a lot of us, because we're taught that the creative arts isn't something that you can make a living at, and isn't something that is even real. You know, a lot of people just think that actors make up their own lines and things like that, you know. So I think a lot of us get in our own way a lot of the time, because we kind of internalize all these messages from society saying it's not a real job, you're not doing something important, you know, all of these things. And of course we know that it is important. The creative arts are really important. When we were all in lockdown thanks to the pandemic, what was everyone doing? They were reading books, they were watching TV shows, they were watching movies, and it was very comforting as well for all of us in lockdown. So, you know, it is an important thing to do. You know, sometimes writers will say to me, oh, I'm just a writer, my wife is the real hero because she's a nurse, or my husband is the real hero because he's a teacher and works with you know, underprivileged kids. And I just think that's just, you know, a load of guff, to be honest, because we all have something to offer. And like I was saying a moment ago, yes, there are jobs that are really, really important and, you know, life or death kind of stuff. And that's not us in the creative arts, but also it can be in real terms as well, because the comfort that we give as writers can be so helpful. I mean, you know, the number of times people have written to me, and I write about issues a lot, and they'll say, I felt seen, I felt like I wasn't the only one, you know, I was so depressed and this cheered me up, you know, for half an hour, those kind of things. So yeah, it is important, I think, you know, it's not as obvious in terms of you know, some of these other jobs, but yeah, if people aren't allowed to express themselves, they aren't allowed to get comfort from stories, then we just end up down a really bad alley, really bad.
So tell us a little bit about the books you've written. So you've written fiction, which I gather, you know, they look on the cover like psychological thrillers or that kind of genre, and you've got your non-fiction. So tell us a little bit about, you know, because I'm always interested in the reasons why people write under pseudonym. So why have you decided to write under Lizzie Fry and under Lucy Hay?
Well, I started obviously writing under my real name, and I basically had two opportunities in the same year, and in publishing you're not allowed to compete with yourself. So it was a question of, do I turn this second book down, or do I just have a different name? And the publisher said, yeah, pick a different name, and then you can have two books in the same year with two different companies. It was that simple, really. It was a legal thing. It was a branding thing as well. My previous novels had been mysteries, and they've been what's publishing called domestic noir. So in other words, very much in the home, almost like, you know, TV dramas, kind of kitchen sink kind of stuff. Whereas my Lizzie Fry stuff is much more high concept. You know, I'm dealing with witches and serial killers and all that kind of stuff. So yeah, it was for that reason, basically. I had to do it. And a lot of people who write a lot and who are very prolific, and I am, you know, it can be very annoying to only have to release one book a year. So obviously it's a great idea to have a pseudonym. And actually it's not even my only pseudonym, Lizzie Fry. I also have another one as well. But I write smut under that name. Erotica.
Well, I can understand why you would choose a different name for that one. So tell us a little bit about Bang to Write, because, you know, well, why you started it, but also, you know, it's just so much resources on that website for a writer, you know, I guess on all different stages of their writing journey, which is what the festival's trying to do. It doesn't matter if you're a complete beginner or if you publish and you want to improve or progress or go down a different route. So yeah, tell us a little bit about Bang to Write.
Well, initially, Bang to Write was just a space where I could write my musings about various craft things to do with like structure and plot and characterization for my clients. I didn't even really know what a blog was. It was just a space on the internet. And I thought, oh, I'll put loads of stuff, extra stuff in there, because I found that I was writing the same kind of thing in script reports for clients all the time. And it was kind of, using up the word count too much. So I thought, I know, I'll write a bunch of articles, because I'm a trained teacher as well. And I just love to research all of this kind of stuff anyway. So I put all my musings about craft on this blog. It was on AOL Hometown in those days, which has been long gone for donkey's years. And it didn't have any pictures, it didn't have any headlines or anything. It was just talks, bits and pieces about craft, links to other blogs that I thought that might be useful. And I just thought, when I gave this, I was so naive. When I gave this URL to my script reading clients, I thought they were the only people reading it. And then I started getting fan mail from people on the internet. And I was like, and they were like, oh, I really want to know more about this, or I want to know more about that. And it's kind of put a light bulb on in my head. It's like, oh yeah, this is the internet. People can find this. How interesting. And that's the kind of the blue touch paper moment where I was like, oh, I could actually create a website and bring new clients towards me this way. Because at that time, I was just dealing with people that I'd met in real life and stuff like that. So yeah, that's how it started. And then of course AOL Hometown wasn't an effective kind of space, and it closed down. And so I moved my articles across to blogger.com, which was fine for a while. And a lot of my friends were on Blogger. There were lots of writers on Blogger at that time. And then after about 5 years over there, and it was called the blogosphere in those days, lots of writers were talking on blogs rather than on social media like they do now. And around about sort of like 2011, 2012, my Blogger, its template stopped updating. It just died. And the theme couldn't be updated, so I couldn't do anything with it. And I was like, oh no, what am I going to do? I'm going to lose all my articles, all that kind of stuff. But luckily a tech savvy friend stepped in and moved all the content, because by this point there was like 2,000 articles on there, and moved it across to WordPress for me. And I was able to kind of really look at WordPress as a proper platform. And I got into creating infographics and creating like pictures and stuff to support the articles. I learned more about how SEO works, and how how to get things seen on Google, and how it kind of relates to social media and plugins and all that kind of stuff. So yeah, it's been a really interesting kind of journey, because when I started online, I was so naive. I didn't even think that strangers might find my content, and now I've got 35,000 people following me on various different platforms, which is great.
Brilliant. So let's talk about what you're going to be talking about at your session. It's called Screenwriting Tricks for Novelists, which is very intriguing because you're putting two genres together. So tell us what you're going to be discussing and why someone should come along to your talk.
Well, basically, one thing that really winds me up about a lot of books is that they are reliant too much on thoughts and psychology. Obviously, that is great in small doses in books. I'm not against it, obviously, but there's a real visual problem in lots of books, particularly in books that would need to be quite plot-led, so like fantasy or crime and things like that. So when I started writing novels basically because I wanted a new challenge. I'd been a script editor for about 15 years at this point, and it was becoming a bit of a busman's holiday, writing my own scripts and stuff like that, because I was always working with producers, creating treatments, all that kind of stuff. And I discovered that I was quite good at writing prose from writing all these treatments and packages, and you call them pitch decks now, things like that. And I thought, well, I read all day for work. I read in the evening as well. I'm a voracious reader. I usually get through somewhere between 50 and 60 books a year, non-fiction and fiction. And one thing I noticed a lot of was this lack of visual writing in novels, and that's a problem in screenwriting as well. A lot of screenwriters will, you know, get the dialogue to tell the story for them, and it can be quite similar in novels, but with psychological things. So we've got info dumps and all that kind of stuff, including stuff that is published as well, sometimes is not that visual. If you look at something like Ready Player One, for instance, and you compare Ready Player One, the book, to how it turned out on the movie by Steven Spielberg, they're like chalk and cheese. They're completely different. Because I remember reading Ready Player One, and it's great in lots of ways, and I love the kind of nostalgia of it and all that kind of stuff, but I was like, we live in a computer world in this book. Why is it so not visual? It's crazy. And actually I watched a really interesting interview with the guy who wrote Ready Player One, and he was talking about how he wrote the book and then he helped with the screenplay for the movie, and it just blew his mind about how screenwriting tricks can just totally change how you tell the story. And it was around that time that I started doing this workshop, because it was something that my clients and writers on the Bang to Write social media were talking about all the time. It's like, how do we make our books more visual? And that's what I wanted to do for this workshop, especially because when I wrote The Coven, which was my first Lizzie Fry book, I did a lot of research into what visual means in screenwriting. I did a lot of Zooms with professional screenwriters who'd worked in Hollywood, and they talked to me about set pieces in particular. And I decided I wanted to create, novel set pieces in my book. And they taught me how to do it, basically. And all I did was, instead of writing it into a screenplay, I wrote it into a book instead, sent it off to the publisher, fingers crossed, all that kind of stuff. And one thing that comes up in the reviews all the time is, this is a cinematic book. This would look, you know, a really big, epic cinematic book. So it did exactly what I wanted it to do. So that's what I want to teach writers to do, because set pieces are something that are really underrated, both in screenwriting and in novel writing. Yet the set piece is the thing that we see in the movie trailer. It's the thing that people put their money on. They come to see the movie because the set pieces are amazing, and I don't see any reason why we can't utilize that technique in our books as well to get people to open them up. And I've done it myself. It does work. I've worked with other authors on their books as well to make them more cinematic. And also, we've got to remember as well that Netflix bought like 280 books in 2020 to adapt. Now, they won't adapt all of them, but they're gonna pick the ones that, you know, can move from the page to the screen very effectively. So the more we can use screenwriting techniques in our novel writing, the more likely we're gonna get our books optioned, and hopefully on the screen. You know, I mean, a lot of my books have been optioned now. None of them have made it to the screen yet, but not for want of trying, because of all the variety of things that's been going on in the world. But I do feel confident that we will see at least one of my books one day on the screen. And certainly, and even if I haven't, even if we don't, I've still been paid the option to get them, you know, and I have that chance. So, and that's something that a lot of authors want to do. They want their work adapted. And so if we use screenwriting techniques, we're much, much more likely to get our work optioned.
Well, fingers crossed that at least one of your books makes it to the screen. So after your talk's finished, what are you hoping that people that do come to it will do afterwards? Are they going to have like a list of actions to do? What are the takeaways that people are going to have so that they can improve their writing and, as you say, make it visual?
Well, I mean, as I'm a born teacher, I love teaching, and I love to kind of give people actionable stuff that they can do. So the idea is that once I will break down all the things in the talk that we need to be thinking about in terms of these screenwriting techniques that we can utilize for our novels, and then they can go away with that as an actionable checklist, basically. Because one thing that I've noticed when writers come to me, and novelists, you know, they'll have all these goals, because whenever I sit down one-to-one with a writer, I say, what's your goal? And 90% of the time the author will say, I want to see my work adapted for a movie or a TV series. So with that in mind, then I then ask them, how do you think that you're supposed to do that? And just to see where we are on the kind of the same page, as it were. And 90% of the time they say, I don't even know where to begin. So that checklist will be where they begin.
Okay, wonderful. Well, thank you so much, Lucy, for your time today. Her talk, Screenwriting Tricks for Novelists, will be on Friday, the 26th of April at 2 p.m. Now, we have 5 talks that afternoon, and Lucy's going to be one of them. So thank you so much, Lucy, for joining us today.
Thank you so much for having me. It's been a blast.
So, great, and we'll see you at the Bournemouth Writing Festival on the 26th, 27th and 28th of April. Take care.